The new relics seem amazing. In this video, I want to give you my honest take on all the new relics, when they are good, when they are not, and just showcase all of them. Be sure to watch the whole video to not miss out a thing about those really strong relics. As always, special shout out to all my dear supporters that help me keep the lights on. And now without much further ado, let's jump straight in. So let's start with the first one. The first one is called Relic of the Scoundrel. I think that's how it's pronounced. It gives you a buff for 8 seconds that increases your critical strike chance by 10%. So it's already quite good whenever you blind or inflict weakness on a foe, which is obviously insane. So it's very easy to upkeep in all game modes, I would say, for most builds, and you get a 10% critical strike chance increase. So if you cannot crit cap with a build in PvE, that makes it very easy to do so, but you will lose some damage for that. But keep in mind, 10% crit rate, if you have 200% critical hit damage, means that you will get a 20% damage buff. So that might be the biggest damaging buff relic possible if you can permanently or at least somewhat frequently every 8 seconds apply weakness or blind. So I think that will be a very strong relic for a specific niche of builds that cannot crit cap that easily. And then of course, it's also very strong in competitive modes, I would say, because getting 10% more crit rate in PvP or World vs. World is way more, I would say, noticeable than it's in PvE. And weakness and blind is even like more potent there because it actually has value because you fight actual players. So I think that's a really good relic already. You can get this one by completing the Act 1 of the story of Visions of Eternity achievements, or by purchasing it from the World vs. World vendor, or getting it from the reward track from World vs. World or PvP, which goes of course for all the relics shown in this video. Let's go to the next one. The next relic is quite straightforward. It's called the Relic of the First Revenant and gives you minus 33% damage on conditions while you have resistance. So it's so to say referring back to when resistance was making you immune against all conditions. Now it's so to say not making you immune against the damaging conditions anymore, but with this relic you at least get a small damage reduction buff. It's exactly like Resolution. I'm not completely sure. I think they will stack so that if you have Resolution and this relic on, it will typically be like minus 66% damage conditions while you have resistance. That seems quite strong, but I think it's definitely quite a niche relic because resistance is not easily upkeepable for all the specs. And I think even if it would be, not all the specs would take it. And it's definitely only focused on competitive modes. You would probably never play that in PvE. It seems too niche. And I think it's a cool idea, but it's very niche relic, so not the most exciting one there. You can get this by completing the Act 2 story journal achievement from Visions of Eternity. Before I go to the next, I want to remind you, if you like this video, be sure to leave a like, and if you want to see more news and more build guides and even tier lists about the new expansion, be sure to smash that subscribe button. But now let's talk about the third relic. The third relic is a really fun one. It's called Relic of the Pirate Queen, and with a 1 second internal cooldown ICD, it provides you with quickness. I think in PvE, it is very high baseline of, I think, 4 seconds quickness when you CC an enemy. Yeah. In competitive modes, it's lower. I think it's 1 second or 1.5 seconds, something like that. And it is, in my opinion, in competitive modes, not as strong as it is in PvE. In PvE, it is only strong if you play a solo build. In group content, you would never play it, of course, but in solo content, this makes it easy to cap quickness on specific builds. And in competitive modes, I think there are some niche builds that CC a lot that could make use out of it, like maybe Power Mirage or something like that. But I think it's actually not as good as it seems at first. So I think it's probably the best on a solo build in PvE. You can get this by completing the first map's mastery achievement, or of course again World vs. World reward track or vendor. Now to the fourth one. In this one, oh boy, this one seems like the most broken one by design. So Relic of the Mist Stranger it's called, and as far as I can tell, this does not have an internal cooldown. We have to confirm that via some more testing, but I think it doesn't have an internal cooldown, and whenever you strike an enemy while you have this relic equipped, you steal some life. Just straight up. The damage numbers are obviously not insanely high. It's like 100 in PvE and also the same amount of healing, and in PvP it's a little bit lower, but this seems like a very fun idea. So when you have a multi and very fast hitting build, this can be very strong how much healing you get. Of course, if you have like big hitting, slow attacks, that doesn't make any sense. But if you like a lot of multi hits like maybe a Willbender, maybe like some kind of Untamed or Gale Shot, something like that, that hits a lot of times, you can actually get a lot of lifesteal, which is not only a cool thing because lifesteal is some weird thing that interacts differently than other damaging types, but also heals you, because the healing effect can be quite potent. If you hit a lot, it can be really strong. I think that is a really nice niche relic that can work as a solo build relic that keeps you alive, maybe even as a damaging relic or some kind of hybrid damaging and healing relic in PvE if you cannot trust your healers or have a hard-hitting fight. And also, so some kind of like Secures relic, but with some damage on top of that and a little bit less healing. And I think in PvP and World vs. World, I think that can be very fun on some specific spec that just need a little bit more healing and maybe a little bit more damage. But I think that's a really cool designed relic. I really like this. Could be potentially game breaking. We have to see how high the numbers are, if you can really like abuse that crazily. But I personally think that's quite fun. You can get this one by completing a specific step in the second map's mastery achievement, or of course again World vs. World, vendor or reward track of PvP or World vs. World. Now to the fifth relic, Relic of the Biomancer. And this one is a little bit weird, to be honest. You can get this one from the first map's world boss by completing it, and the relic itself is probably very strong. I don't know if there is an ICD again on this one. It's not confirmed yet, but whenever you inflict bleeding or poison, maybe they have a different separate ICD if it would have. I don't know. We will see. You heal yourself by over 100 in PvE, and that's a smaller number in competitive modes, but that seems very, very strong. That's like a Sekiros relic for Condi builds that apply bleeding or poison. So not a specific, like, not really good for example, Conditioned Willbend, but for example, Necromancer. Thief specifically does like bleeding and poison only. So it's like insane how much healing you could get if it doesn't have an internal cooldown. I expect it has a probably 1 second ICD, maybe has a quarter of a second ICD, something like that. But I cannot see this being without an ICD because you can spam attacks with skills that do that very frequently. But who knows? It's a really cool thing, really interesting idea, like a Sekiros relic that heals condition builds. I think I like this one a lot. Really interesting design. Now to the last relic, which is called Relic of Castora. You can get this one from completing the meta event of the second map, or of course World vs. World or PvP reward packs, or the World vs. World vendor again. What does it do? It's a quite dull buff, but it's a very potent one in some circumstances. Whenever you heal your allies that have below 50% health, your healing that you do to them is increased by 25%. So that's a very strong buff, and it can be in competitive modes, for example, quite potent. I would say in PvE it's a little bit niche because oftentimes you don't want to let your allies drop below 50% anyway. So I think it depends a bit on the usage. On harder fights, I think it gets more useful than in easy fights. I think it is competing only, of course, like against Caracosa relics, stuff like that. So I think it makes some sense. It's a passive buff that doesn't require that much gameplay, so it's probably a little bit easier to handle. But in general, it's like an interesting relic that I don't see that much play, aside, of course, from some healers that will really have some big burst heals to not like waste the buff on stuff that is like healing and ticking to 51% and then you lose that buff. You want to have an insane huge amount of heal that heals like 50% of the allies' health while they are at 40% health, so they go up to 90, and because of the buff they go up to 100. That's more like it, and I think that's quite a big condition to be met on a healer. But we will have to see. I think it's an interesting and designed relic. Anyway, let me know your takes on those relics. That are all of them for now. We will get more with the next updates. I really enjoyed those 6. I think they have really interesting ideas behind them and probably quite game breaking as well, and that's what I like as a build crafter. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like, and if you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next video.